So what is the probate process in general? So the probate process is the legal process that happens when someone passes away. And so the first thing that typically happens is uh, we look for a will. If there's no will, then somebody applies to the probate court to get permission to be named the administrator of an estate. Once the probate court receives that application, they have 90 days to appoint someone as the administrator of the estate. Now, typically, there are waivers that must be signed by the next of kin to say that they agree to the appointment. And if they don't agree to the appointment, then the probate court will schedule a hearing. The next thing that happens is once the appointment is granted, the probate court will issue what's called a letter of authority. Now, with this letter of authority, it's a magic key. And it's a magic key because if you need access to a bank account of your deceased, you could take the letter of authority and get access to it. If you need to get information about stocks, bonds, IRAs, 401ks, you could use the letter of authority to get access to the assets. Once you've identified all the assets that belong to the estate, you have to file an inventory and appraisal of the assets. Okay. And so the inventory and appraisal of the assets are due 90 days after the appointment of the administrator. And so what that means is we have to categorize all the assets that are in the estate, and we have to put values next to those assets. So number one, we identify the assets, and then we determine what are the values of those assets. Once the inventory and appraisal is filed, then the probate court can approve the inventory, and then we move into the next phase, which is typically the distribution of the assets. And the distribution of the assets are based on whether there's a will, and if there's no will, then there's what we call intestate succession laws, which specifically lays out who's supposed to inherit, right? The surviving spouse, or it was maybe your step parent is supposed to receive some, and then you receive another portion of the proceeds. So once we hit that, you're looking at about 9 to 12 months for the assets to be distributed. And what we see very often are creditors get involved. So creditors might get involved to say, hey, so-and-so owed me some money. So right now, my team and I are working on a case where a big bank like Discover made a claim against the estate